At the time of filming this, it's still locked down. I am in fact filming this on the Saturday of the Easter weekend. I'm still absolutely bored off my face. And I thought today I'd do a silly little project that has nothing to do with anything. It involves this. Now this, as you'll know if you watch my channel regularly, is not my kind of thing. This is an American Boxcar. It's not really to scale. I'd say if anything, it's probably the closest scale it is. It looks a bit like 7mm narrow gauge, whatever you call that. It's normally known by something cumbersome like 016.5 or something like that. Anyway, this wagon actually came from the Hornby Toy Story set. I got the rolling stock cheap because I wanted the locomotive. Yeah, frankly, it's really no use as a model. I mean, it's, as I say, it's from the train set that Hornby produced as a tie-in with Toy Story 3, so it's a model of a toy which is entirely fictional. I mean, there's a lot of detail on it. It's just that there's nothing remotely to scale. Like it's got this brake wheel which looks too small to be of any sort of use. It's got these steps which look far too narrow to be of any use, and it's got this enormous padlock on the door. The paint job's pretty nice, though. I do like the paint job. But what I was thinking I would do with it is I quite enjoy the horror stories of H.P. Lovecraft. Now, if you're not familiar with Lovecraft, basically he's kind of had a resurgence of popularity in the last decade or so. He is a horror author who is famous for kind of cosmic horror, which is an interesting genre, but I feel like a model railway video isn't really the place to go into the intricacies of it. But his stories are usually set in this sort of weird version of New England, which is it's set in the then present day of the kind of 1920s, 1930s, but it feels much older. It has this really kind of this kind of a 19th century feel. Like, he uses a lot of archaic language. The settings tend to be fairly timeless. He uses a lot of British spelling. He was a big fan of that. And there's this sort of palpable feel of kind of decay in the settings of his stories. Then I kind of imagine that any railway travelling through Lovecraft country would, I think it would be pretty dilapidated. I think it would definitely be using 19th century style rolling stock on its last wheels. So, yeah, I thought, having no other use for this, I'd do an H.P. Lovecraft boxcar. Yeah, I'm not going to try to explain this any further because it's a silly little project, so let's get going. So I've primed my van. Now I want to get a rusty effect. I'll show you the full process, but basically what I want is at this stage is lots of rust between the panels. Like, this should be a really dilapidated boxcar. So I've gone over it with the rusty paint. It's dried. It's not as orangey as I anticipated, but I am going over it with a thin down wash of brown paint to deepen the shadows and emphasise the darkness, which is more or less what H.P. Lovecraft himself was trying to do, so there you go. So what I'm thinking now is this is going to be a refrigerated wagon, or reefer, as it's known, and so I'm going to start with a thin layer of off-white. Oh no, too thin, too thin. Well, anyway, we'll take it from there. Right, so the white paint is on. That's looking suitably horrible. And I don't know if you can see, but I've done some thin pencil lines there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some lettering. Now, the professional way to do it would be to get some decals made up. I'm not professional, so I'm just going to write them on using this. This is just a regular drawing pen. It's waterproof, so hopefully we shouldn't have any trouble with the weathering, but we'll see. Famous last words. Let's get to it. So that's the lettering on. If you've read the story The Shadow over Innsmouth, you'll know the significance of Innsmouth fisheries. The lettering's not the best I've done. Like, I sort of ran out of room on Innsmouth. But it's not a super serious wagon, obviously. And I'm going to add some weathering. So I've mixed up a slightly lighter shade of rust, which I'm going to just have streaking down the sides. I always like to get a lot of variety with me rust. There you go, lots and lots of rusty streaks on there, because this wagon is supposed to be very wet. I can't really explain it without you actually knowing the story, but basically what H.P. Lovecraft was very fond of was this concept that under the sea there are all sorts of weird, horrible creatures, and I think that's probably what's being transported in this wagon. So, it has a lot of saltwater exposure, and I'm just going to add some green. But yeah, we can only speculate as to what horrors are being transported herein. And where to? Washington DC, probably. Haha, satire. So now I'm picking out the detail with a black wash, just to generally add shadow over Innsmouth, in fact. Now, to be honest, I wouldn't normally do it this way. Normally I'd find this a bit too dark, but I'm going for a kind of stylized thing here. See, the rivet detail is really coming up nicely there. So I'm just waiting for the wash to dry. I used an awful lot of it, so this is going to take a while, but I keep spotting things that I've missed. So I've repainted the padlock there. I figure that we don't know exactly what's in there, but it's probably not something you want getting out before its destination, so whatever state the rest of the wagon might be in, the padlock is going to be brand new. I've also picked out one or two things. I've picked out this, I think it's to do with the brakes, and the brake wheels on the top there. Yeah, oh, let me just quickly show you the other side. Now, I went with a different version of the Innsmouth fisheries lettering, just because... No excuse, I just I didn't want to do the big lettering again. But, you know, I figure it, you're never going to see both sides of the wagon at the same time, so... unless I happen to have another boxcar, it doesn't really matter. Oh, okay. I'm just going to dry brush a little rust on here. This is a paint called Riser Rust from Games Workshop, which I have had some success with in the past. There it is. It's a paint that you, as I say, use fairly dry, fairly sparingly. Hopefully that will bring out some of that rusty underframe detail. Now I'm just going to add some powder to tone things down a bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding a touch of gloss varnish down here. Just to give it that wet look. Should be pretty gross when it dries. It is finished. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with the way that's turned out. I think that's suitably horrible. Cthulhu only knows what I'm going to do with it, of course. I don't really have any use for such a wagon, but, you know, it's a bit of fun. And I'll see you next time when I will be doing something a bit more serious. No, wait, I can't promise that. See you next time.